As promised, I said I would make another video about, or possibly expand on this sort of thing in the future, my definitive spiritual hierarchy of existence and reality, which I've already talked about in very great detail. However, just checking in, September 28, 2022, just want to say that this is a very, very, actually, extremely effective theory, because it incorporates multiple memory techniques, and which happen to be very effective for learning, and it happens to give dead giveaways to how my arguments are true. It even almost proves itself true, in fact. Although it doesn't, but it almost does, in a sense. Okay, so I've talked about it in that a few videos ago, maybe 10 or 12 videos ago, I don't know how much, but multiple videos ago, but it's not an old video of mine or anything like that. And one thing I realized after reflecting about this is that I failed to realize there's something more to this theory that I didn't realize initially, and that's that essentially what you have here is, of course, since I was talking about the physical aspects of this triangle, or whatever structure shape it is, it goes from bottom up, and naturally it would be a triangle if you had a hierarchy, but if you in a linear hierarchy anyway, and pretty much a spiritual hierarchy would be linear. And yeah, it would be linear, and if it were, it would not really be a square or some other shape, as I've explained. On a diagram, it would be a triangle, because, like I said, it gets thinner at the top. There's less people, and most hierarchies would make sense to be thinner at the top, because again, be more narrow, because again, there's less at the top of a hierarchy. So how can you represent this on a diagram without it being thinner? There's quantity is sacrificed for quality for whatever hierarchy, in terms of whatever hierarchy it is. So I'm not saying quality in general. Like, you could have a hierarchy of evil, and there's less at the top who do the most evil. That doesn't mean they're higher quality in existence. It just means they're higher quality to the motives of. They're more valuable to the motives of the hierarchy and what it stands for. That's all it means. But when you apply it to spirituality, the more you get, the closer you get to the top. The more the easy. I want to say, because it's linear. Because of the fact that it's linear, it kind of contradicts the things I was saying about it being exponentially better at the top. That's why I'm starting to suspect that maybe when you go to the bottom up, it's actually going to be an exponential triangle. It'd be like spread out, but then instead of linearly going more narrow, it would be in an exponential, because sorry, I have to mute my text messages. Pay no attention to those. I suppose if this ever did go viral, it wouldn't even matter, since pretty much the entire system would start getting fixed anyway. Anyway, the bottom line is, sorry, I was just thinking out loud there, as I do often on this channel. I mean, like I said, I do improvise and wing it on this channel, but largely doing so, I've still been successful anyway, despite it being, okay, so anyway, as I was saying, it would be more likely to be exponential, since whatever's with some hierarchies, it would be exponential, at least. For example, that's why they say that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The top, it's easier to improve the more power you have, the more protection you have for yourself. And the less protection you have for yourself, the harder it is to improve. Because basically, whatever theme is of your life, it's going to be hard to remove that theme from your life. If it's poverty or poor self-care, or if it's not, if it's just the opposite, if it's riches and great self-care, it's going to be hard to remove it because well, hold on a second, let me just okay, anyway, as I was saying, the point is, there's more in play. Whatever things being the way they are is, if things really are like, it's really, really standard and tradition and normal for things to be the way they are. And it's hard, the typical way of things, and the world evolves slowly. And that would mean that the rich do get richer and the poor do get poorer, in a sense. It would mean that it would be hard to take them out of those situations, because if you don't, then they'll start to exponentially improve or devolve in certain regards, and then you don't have this same system. So to preserve the system, all these things that fluctuation is there's a lot of fluctuation, but not when it comes to fluctuation that would tear down the very system itself. So, not enough for that. So, at least not without significant time. And exponentially, as I said, the world is improved exponentially. That doesn't mean that every nation in the world will improve. That doesn't mean that every nation in the world will improve exponentially. At least not from, say, I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think every nation will. I don't even think any nation will improve exponentially, except for probably the most well-off nations. So they're like the ones that are like the heart of the earth. They're like the hearts of the earth, essentially. But yeah, in terms of like several business matters, So, however, how do I put this? Yeah. So basically, what that also means is, like I was saying, morality and creativity. I was gonna say that what this video is actually to bring up a really good point, which is that it's not really as though the biblical God would be on the pedestal of the top layer of self-actualization, at least not mathematically, right? If we use geometry here with algebra for how it's a triangle, and the thinner it goes, the thinner it goes in the directions that the thinning goes, it's higher quality for the rest of the hierarchy than for the motives of it anyway. Then by that logic, it would make sense to say that by that logic, the God of the Bible would not, in major world religions, would not be at the top, because I don't know who that is. Hold on, let me take that. Alright, anyway. So look, I had to take that, but yeah. It's fucking spam. Anyway, like I was saying, you have the top, which would supposedly have this biblical God or major world religion God, which, look, the biblical God has certain facets of morality, from what I was saying, right? But it does not have all of morality, and it does. But of course, the Christians won't believe me when I say that, if I just say it now, or if I give them what I've already shown them and proven. So I have to we have to use something more obvious to them that they would find more believable. Obviously, in the top layer you have, what is it? Problem solving, right? No matter what your view is on what's a problem or not, the general consensus amongst the neurotypicals and Christians is that problem solving would include just all the social issues and atrocities which their religions say are such. But the biblical God isn't big on problem solving, because he even blatantly states that he doesn't care about certain problems enough to solve them or get rid of them into eternity. Now, the top layer doesn't say that, it's like, it doesn't blatantly say, labeled hearsay, that that's something that this being, it doesn't say to what degree it works with problem solving, but, operates through problem solving, but still, it's implied that it does to an infinite degree for as many problems as possible when you use the fact that, like I said, it would be exponential for the spiritual hierarchy. So mathematically, the bottom layer would have exponentially less problem solving involved. From the very bottom to the top, even if it's not exponential, it still would. In fact, this doesn't even make sense to be linear, these hierarchies, because it'd be an exponential difference in terms of quality from the bottom to the top things here anyway. I mean, breathing, food, water, homeostasis, mere physiological processes are exponentially barbaric in comparison, are exponentially worse than the top ones. Like, it's like you're comparing Hitler at the bottom to God at the top, in terms of quality. I mean, Hitler isn't at the bottom, but it was just an example. Better way to put it, say a psychopathic caveman at the bottom versus God at the top. Essentially the entire gist of it. And yeah, I mean, because literally, if you think about it, right? Yeah, I mean, basically that's the entire gist of it. I mean, it's the mathematical. If we accept that the mathematics is the language of universe and reality and the laws of logic, then you can apply mathematics to the language of just about any study, even this. As I've been saying anyway, but especially when you use it in a super obvious way, would be with diagrams, especially a diagram that is the hierarchy diagram. Since a lot is explained through visual representation symbols. And, yeah, I mean, basically because of those symbols, it's a lot easier to make sense of what I'm saying. And when somebody is trying to understand how a hierarchy works, it's much easier with a diagram than without it. Since it builds off of concepts we already find it very easy to understand and accept. There's not really much of a struggle. I mean, why do you think they teach children in school with diagrams instead of just teaching them? Because it's easier. It's easier for the brain to break down the concepts and break down the information into smaller bits of information. Well, anyway, like I said, it would be exponential. So instead of just a straight line like this, it'd be like, the curve, because, exponential growth is curved on a diagram. It's not rocket science. It's elementary school, 4th grade, 3rd grade stuff. 2nd grade, no, not 2nd grade, but like 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade stuff. I would know. Already been through high school, already been to elementary school. But yeah, yeah, that's pretty much the entire gist of it. I mean, there's really nothing else to say about this other than it's just, I forgot to show that, that's what it is. Like mathematics will make it be so that it's an exponential growth in the diagram, in diagram terms. So that means, and if there is an exponential growth in the diagram terms, then the gap is much bigger between us and whatever they said the real God is. I mean, then again, hold on. Let's think. I mean, I wouldn't say us. I'd say the neurotypicals in God. Definitely not me, but definitely the neurotypicals. But as far as like, I don't know how to put it. I guess you could say, how do I put it? Trying to think of an analogy. Even if neurotypicals do think that it is actually an exponential, that hierarchies actually are exponential, and that it should be drawn as such on diagrams, but it just isn't because it's not as efficient for some reason for teaching purposes, I can believe it, but that doesn't mean that they actually have an understanding of exponential, how exponentially, how big a gap is if it's exponential between neurotypicals and God in terms of morality and views on justice and operations and religion and philosophy. In all seriousness, if it was exponential, it'd be much bigger. And the other pattern is when it's exponential, a number of different difficulties are removed. Many different, until essentially there's no more problems that can't be solved. But neurotypicals just insist that there are some problems that just will never be solved because they can't be solved. But that's just retarded, as I've proven time and time again, that these people have very retarded minds. That this literally, if it is actually exponential, then from the bottom to the top, bottom would be all the problems. If the bottom is the opposite of the top, then and the bottom can't solve any problems, and the top is the opposite, then the top can solve any problem. And from that point to the top, it's exponential growth. Think about how many problems a thing in existence can have, and then compare it to something with limitless power and intelligence. It'd be pretty much like talking about things on the two opposites, and a pair of opposites, and things on the opposite end of the spectrum. So if God is the opposite of whatever's at the bottom, and the bottom has no way to solve any problems, but just keeps them going, it can't solve any problems for itself, then the top can essentially solve any problem for itself. Unless you want to say the bottom can solve some problems for itself, but not many, which is believable too. And then, what that would mean proportionately for God? Well, as I said, God can solve any problem, but it doesn't mean he's going to solve any problem immediately. Even the Bible is able to pick up on this pattern on different occasions, but still fails many times. Very bad. Very bad. It's a very stupid book. But yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, the top is way more important, honestly. You also have to accept that if the top is more important than the bottom, and they're opposites, then in terms of hierarchy terms, then the bottom of the hierarchy is the worst you can do at the operations of the hierarchy, and the top is just the opposite. It's the best you can do at it. And God is at the very top of it, of the spiritual hierarchy, so he's way more important to the hierarchy. He's way more important to the hierarchy. But that still begs the question, and that's the thing, we wouldn't exist without God. The lower levels wouldn't even exist without God. So that's a dead giveaway that what I'm saying is true. He's the most important part of the hierarchy of spirituality, amongst some other dead giveaways I've talked about and that others have talked about. So, but if it's exponential, and he's the most important, then he's exponentially most important compared to the rest, which the rest are pretty much just trash. So, yeah. I don't know what else to say about this other than, yeah, basically it's like, what would happen is, from bottom up, you see all the issues removed, right? But here's the thing: if we want to figure out how many problems are solved bottom up, then just follow the pattern. Just follow the pattern. You'll see that at the top, any problem can be solved. And if every problem can be solved, then that already gives it away that major world religions are wrong, like you're saying, because they say eternal damnation could never be solved. It's the unsolvable problem, it's just the mad delusions of very weak-minded people, to be honest. The neurotypical throughout history. Okay, so look. Breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion, right? But that's it. There's nothing else. If there's nothing else, then you don't. Then everything you do is just for those, at the expense of any, security of body, of employment, of resources, of morality of the family, of health, of property, And that's what I thought too, except I still think there could be some morality in the physiological level. And there is some security, of body. There is some There's none of employment. There's some of resources. There's some of the family, of health, of property, just not of employment. And so this is actually like every level is a step below what it actually is, just because the top one is as well. Like I've been saying, it's missing some things in there. Like I think the physiological would have morality within it. If what I was saying about morality is true, if my arguments for them are true, then it would have to be that it's actually, even the physiological does some things for morality. Now, safety, it's just saying, well, this is what the primary focus is. It's just saying that the levels, the label on the left is the level it's at, and that's like the description is like, well, what's the primary focus? Because once you've achieved a certain level, you can have this, you can actually maintain and achieve this level, this primary focus, instead of just, you know, these trash things like the primary focus is physiological, and just that, well, it's not going to be much. It's going to be trash, right? Same thing with safety, you know. Well, not even safety. Safety is like neurotypical stuff, you know. Except for some reason, you know, like I said, every level has everything else that's in it. Well, that's what I thought. Except it's not really true, you know. It does, but it doesn't necessarily have it to the same degree if you think about it. Like safety, you can't have safety. You can't achieve safety level unless you also are able to maintain physiological. But then you have to start. But the more levels you have achieved, the more you have to incorporate into what you're at. So it's like you have to divide up these different levels amongst your being. So once you're at safety, you have to balance safety and physiological, but not really balance it evenly, of course, because that's not even mathematically possible. You just have to, like, it's not like 50% of the time you do this, and no, it's like you prioritize it through, you know, balance. And so a balanced self. And so the same thing can be said with all these levels, except the higher you go up, the less you'll use the less you'll have to incorporate the lower levels or use things of the lower level, simply because the higher you go, there's less things for higher quality. I mean, you'll have those things, you'll have less of them, but the things you do keep, you'll still use them less often. You keep using less. The pattern is it's about it's like conservatism, you know, in a sense of a certain definition of the word. Like it's self-actualization. If you have to be self-sacrificial, you know, spiritual, so you have to like give up so many things for higher quality. Like the less you have, the higher quality, essentially, is what I'm saying. In general, that's the way it is. It's an old notion. And so, yeah. But the self-actualization, to esteem, to love, belonging, safety, physiological, you know. Self-actualization, you have esteem, but you have self-esteem, but do you have, you know, at some point, you know, but when? Do you have respect of others at some point, but when? Respect by others at some point, but when? Confidence at some point, but when? All these things, but when, you know? And so, yeah. With love, belonging, if you're at self-actualization, do you have friendship, family, and sexual intimacy? You very well could. You probably do. But it's basically saying whatever level you're at, that's the highest things you can achieve. That's your maximum output. So doesn't mean you're constantly doing it. It's just your maximum output. Doesn't mean you're constantly doing those things, though. Doesn't mean you're constantly making friends or constantly having a friendship, constantly having family in your life, or constantly having sexual intimacy. No, it doesn't. But it's your maximum output if you're stuck at that level. And I guess this also shows that if you can't really go in between levels, if there's a gap between each tier, and you can't go in between it, then that means that every time people, that says a lot about the timing of things. If people can actually go in between, reach higher levels, which they do, then it's like really quickly, which makes sense, you know. Because when something does change in a big way, it tends to be pretty quickly. Although, I mean, I'm not going to say you can't be in between levels, though. I'm not going to say that, but it could be so quick that it's as if there was no being in between. Or it just depends on what hierarchy we're talking about. It depends on some of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially the entire gist of it. From physiological all the way to self-actualization, you would actually eliminate every single problem, or not eliminate every problem, but every problem in your life would be eliminated from that point to that point. So. Well, I hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, subscribe. I'm out. Bye.